The summer sun cast pale golden rays, spilling over the uneven pavement where old, worn-out bricks jutted up with time, forming an unforgiving obstacle for Liam Callahan's wheelchair. The 6-year-old frowned, gripping the armrests tighter as his chair jolted over each raised edge. His small hands clenched instinctively, a reflex born from a life where stability was never guaranteed. He could no longer remember the last time he had run freely. 2 years ago, a horrific car accident had stolen his mother's life and left his legs void of sensation. His father, James Callahan, a principled special agent, had also made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Since then, Liam's world had shrunk, confined to the arms of his only remaining family, his aunt, Sarah Callahan. But even with Sarah always by his side, the feeling of weightlessness, of being untethered, never left him. Beside him, a German shepherd with deep golden fur streaked with black moved in silence, his sharp eyes sweeping the area like a dedicated bodyguard. Rex, once an elite canine service dog, was now Liam's most loyal companion. Whenever the wheelchair veered off course, Rex would instinctively adjust his movements to help keep balance, making the ride a little less grueling. Liam lowered his gaze, running his fingers lightly over Rex's head, drawing warmth and quiet strength from the touch. His aunt had stepped away to buy ice cream from a nearby stand, leaving Liam and Rex on the quiet sidewalk. But he wasn't worried. Rex was always here, his shield, his legs, when he had none. Liam trusted the dog completely. Then, as he navigated another uneven patch of pavement, the growl of a motorcycle rumbled from a distance. The heavy, throaty engine noise grew closer, dragging the acrid scent of gasoline with it. Liam lifted his head. A group of bikers appeared. 5 men on roaring motorcycles slowed as they rolled into the narrow street, their engines growling like an unspoken warning. These were not casual passers-by. There was something predatory in their eyes as they scanned the area, like hunters searching for easy prey. And when their gaze landed on a boy in a wheelchair with a large dog at his side, one of them smirked and signaled for the others to halt. The leader dismounted. He had cropped hair, an unkempt beard, and a frame hardened by muscle. His faded military fatigues peeked out beneath a weathered leather jacket. Everything about the way he carried himself, the way he moved, the sharpness in his posture, spoke of a past forged in battle. His storm-gray eyes flicked over Liam before settling on Rex. A brief frown crossed his face. "That's a good dog," he muttered. But Rex did not react like an ordinary dog. He didn't bark, didn't shrink back, didn't issue the usual warning growl. Instead, he stood firm, paws planted solidly on the ground, eyes locked onto the stranger. The man, Derek, lowered himself slightly, reaching a hand toward Rex but stopping just short. Testing. He snapped his fingers. Rex didn't flinch. Derek took a step closer, as if measuring the dog's tolerance. Still, Rex remained unyielding. Only a subtle shift. His body lowering slightly, weight distributed in a way that promised immediate action should the need arise. Derek let out a quiet chuckle. Not just any dog. He made another move, a sudden twist of his shoulder. A feint, the kind of motion used by handlers to test a trained dog's reflexes. But Rex didn't fall for it. He wasn't startled. He wasn't confused. He simply watched, his gaze cold and calculating, waiting for the next move. Derek said nothing more, but deep in his mind, something stirred. A storm of memories threatening to break free. He had seen those eyes before. Once. A long time ago. But before he could piece together the fragments, another biker stepped forward. There was something cruel, almost amused in his gaze. "Think I can make that mutt jump?" he sneered, then abruptly swung his foot at Liam's wheelchair. Liam didn't have time to react. The kick wasn't hard, but it was enough to throw his chair off balance. His heart lurched, and for a split second, fear surged through him. Rex growled. A low, guttural sound, deep, vicious, sharp as a blade slicing through the air. The bikers froze. Derek clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He had promised James that they would always have each other's backs, that no one would be left behind in vain. But James had died, and Derek never even knew. He had spent these past years without once looking back, without once searching for news of his old teammate. Guilt crashed over him like a storm. But then another name in the report made his heartbeat stutter. Liam Callahan. Derek read it again. And again. James's son, a 6-year-old boy. He flipped through more pages, searching for information about the child. A blow landed deep in his gut. He remembered Liam from earlier that day. The small boy in the wheelchair, his clear eyes shadowed with a sadness that was hard to define. And Rex, the dog that had once been his comrade, once been James's right hand, was now protecting that child. The truth was undeniable. It wasn't a coincidence that he had crossed paths with Liam. It wasn't a coincidence that Rex was by his side. Something had led him here. Something had pushed him to uncover the past he had left behind. But one question remained, a ghost hovering in his mind. How did James die? Derek scrolled through classified reports, searching for the cause of James's death. But the official records only stated that he had perished in an unexplained accident while on duty. No detailed report. No concrete evidence. Only one clear fact. James was dead, and someone wanted to keep the truth buried. A dark feeling twisted in Derek's chest. A man like James wouldn't die so easily from an unexplained accident. He had seen James survive the most brutal missions, walk out of situations no one should have made it out of. If James was dead, there had to be a reason. Derek shut his laptop and took a deep breath. He couldn't walk away from this. He owed James an answer. He owed Liam protection. And above all, he couldn't let Rex fight alone. Derek had no idea that while he was lost in thought, somewhere else, another man was speaking his name. Vincent Hayes. In the vast room, illuminated only by a single hanging light, Vincent Hayes sat in silence behind a sleek black wooden desk, his hollow eyes fixed on nothing in particular. His finger swirled the glass of whiskey in his hand, but the tension in his grip betrayed the storm inside his mind. An old photograph lay on the desk, its edges frayed with time, but the face in the picture remained sharp under the dim glow. Caleb Hayes, a young man with an optimistic smile and eyes brimming with ambition. Vincent reached for the photograph, his thumb slowly tracing the face of his younger brother. A foolish kid with dreams of honor and loyalty. That was why Caleb had chosen to join the military. But Caleb was dead. It happened 3 years ago. A disastrous military operation. A bloody ambush. When the dust settled, Caleb never came back. Derek Foster, the man leading the team, was the only one who survived. Vincent had never believed it was just an accident. Impossible. Caleb had been a top soldier. Fast, strong, fearless. So why was he the one who died while Derek lived? Had Derek made a choice? Had Foster decided who deserved to be saved and who was left behind? Caleb had been his pride, his legacy. And yet Caleb was gone while Derek walked free. That made his hatred burn even hotter. His brother's death had changed him forever. From grief, from rage, he had built himself into something stronger, something ruthless, until no one dared to stand against him. He had waited, day after day, year after year, for the right moment. And now, the time had come to settle his debt with Derek Foster. Follow him, and take care of that ex-soldier, Vincent ordered. His men nodded and left without another word. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows against gray brick walls, bathing the narrow alley in the faded light of a dying day. The air felt unnaturally still. Metal trash bins stood stacked against the walls, puddles of murky water reflecting the flickering glow of streetlights, casting an atmosphere thick with tension. Derek Foster stepped into the alley, an eerie sense of familiarity creeping over him like a cold wave. Years of combat had sharpened his instincts, and right now they screamed at him. Something wasn't right. His every step was calculated, his muscles taut with anticipation. He wasn't one to make mistakes. But this time, he knew someone was waiting for him. He stepped forward slowly, sharp eyes scanning every shadowed corner. But before he could react, a sudden noise shot through the air. Bang! A powerful force slammed into his back, sending him crashing forward into the freezing brick wall. A sharp pain shot from his shoulder down his spine, but Derek didn't have time to process it. He rolled to the side just as another blow came down. "I thought you'd notice us sooner, Foster." A voice rasped, rough and laced with mockery. 4 masked figures blocked both ends of the alley. One wielded a metal rod, 2 carried knives, and the last one gripped a thick chain, his knuckles tightening around the steel links. No explanations, no warnings, only the raw hostility of men who wanted to see him fall. Derek barely had time to react before a brutal punch struck his ribs, knocking him off balance against the icy brick. The pain spread through his muscles, but there was no time to feel it. The attackers weren't giving him space to fight back, closing in without hesitation. He could take on 1, maybe 2, but 4 at once, unarmed and trapped in a narrow alley, put him at a severe disadvantage. Then a deep growl echoed through the distance, followed by rapid footfalls pounding against the pavement. A dark blur tore through the air, golden eyes flashing in the shadows. Rex. He didn't slow down. He didn't hesitate. Like a living projectile, he shot straight for the knife-wielding thug closing in on Derek. At the same moment, Derek took advantage of the split-second distraction, dodging another incoming strike and launching his counterattack. A vicious snarl erupted as Rex collided with his target, slamming into the attacker with bone-crushing force. The man had no time to react. His body was thrown to the ground, and before he could move, Rex's fangs had already sunk deep into his knife hand. A scream tore from his throat as his weapon clattered onto the pavement. Derek didn't waste the opening. The moment Rex took the first one down, he spun and landed a solid punch against the jaw of the metal rod wielder charging at him. The man staggered for a second, just enough time for Derek to pivot and drive a kick into his knee, knocking him off balance. Rex, relentless, didn't stop. The second his jaws released one target, he spun and lunged at the next, the man wielding the chain. Before the thug could swing, Rex struck low, ramming into his side with crushing impact. The sheer force sent him toppling backward. Within seconds, Rex's teeth clamped onto his wrist, making him cry out in agony and drop his weapon. The last thug hesitated, instinctively stepping back. He hadn't expected a dog to fight with such terrifying precision. Rex's eyes weren't just wild with aggression. They were cold, calculating. He didn't attack randomly. Every move was deliberate, targeting weak points to disable his enemies instantly. Derek flexed his wrist, adjusting his stance. One last opponent remained, the man with the metal rod, who had now steadied himself, swinging for Derek's head in a last-ditch attack. But Rex was faster. He lunged sideways, locking onto the thug's knee just before impact. The sudden jolt made the man falter, giving Derek enough time to seize the rod, twist his wrist, and slam a brutal strike into his ribs. The final attacker crumpled. Silence settled over the alley, broken only by Derek's heavy breathing and the deep, warning growl still rumbling in Rex's throat. The dog remained standing, sharp eyes sweeping over the fallen men, nostrils flaring as if memorizing their scent. He didn't take his eyes off them, ready to strike again at the first sign of resistance. Derek knelt down, fingers gripping the thick fur along Rex's back. His breaths were still uneven from the fight, but the injuries weren't what occupied his thoughts. It was the question burning through his mind. "Why are you here?" Rex held his gaze. No words were needed, yet there was something in those golden eyes, an understanding, a connection that had never faded. "Rex!" Sarah stood frozen at the entrance of the alley, her wide eyes darting between Derek's bruised face, the bloodstains splattered across the pavement, and the unmoving bodies on the ground. Her gaze finally landed on Rex. The dog remained tense, ears pricked, his breathing heavy but his body still coiled, as if the fight wasn't over. Minutes ago, everything had been normal. Sarah had taken Rex for a walk down a quiet street, the leash slack in her grip like always. Then, in an instant, he had stopped. His head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring as if catching something invisible in the air. A distant, metallic tang of blood laced with human scent. The fur along his back bristled, his breathing deepened, his sharp eyes locked onto the dimly lit alley ahead. Sarah followed Rex's gaze but saw nothing beyond the flickering glow of the streetlights. But Rex was different. He didn't just smell blood. He recognized something else, something familiar, a scent buried deep in his memory from years ago. Instinct surged through him, a force stronger than reason, pushing him to act before it was too late. Then he yanked the leash, hard. Too hard. Sarah stumbled, losing her balance for a moment, unable to hold him back. Rex had never acted this way before. He wasn't the kind of dog to be triggered by random sounds or sudden movements. But this time, he bolted like a bullet, as if something ahead mattered more than anything else. Sarah tried to chase after him, but it was futile. By the time she arrived, everything was over. Derek wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his gaze shifting toward the dog beside him. There were too many thoughts racing through his mind. But one thing was certain. Rex had known. He hadn't just sensed danger. He had known exactly who was in it. Even now, Rex hadn't taken his eyes off the men sprawled on the ground. His nostrils flared, committing each scent to memory, every trace of the ones who had attacked Derek. This wasn't just the reflex of a trained K9. It was memory. It was the sharpened intelligence of a warrior honed over time. And no matter how many years had passed, he had never forgotten Derek. Just as he would never forget those responsible for this. Derek wasted no time investigating the people who had come after him. He sat in his small apartment, the glow of his laptop screen reflecting off his sharp features. He traced the attackers' movements, pulling whatever information he could from the city's surveillance system, piecing together even the smallest details Rex had left behind. The grainy footage from aging security cameras made one thing clear. Those men weren't random thugs. They were organized, disciplined, and most importantly, they knew who he was. He sifted through familiar names in the underworld, but none had reason to target him so openly. Whoever it was had a personal grudge. Someone patient enough to wait for his return before making a move. Then, the name appeared, and with it, an old memory crashed back into him. Vincent Hayes. Derek leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. That name wasn't unfamiliar. Vincent was the older brother of a former teammate, Afghanistan. 3 years ago. The explosion that had torn the sky apart, the shockwave that had flattened everything in its wake. He had been buried beneath the rubble, lungs burning, the weight of debris pressing down on him. His breath had been ragged, his vision fading, and he had thought, that was it. That was the end. But the reinforcements arrived just in time. James Callahan and Rex had pulled him out of the wreckage. Caleb Hayes wasn't so lucky. By the time they found Caleb, his body was almost entirely buried. His youthful face, his wide eyes, frozen in an expression of disbelief, as if he hadn't even had time to understand that fate had already sealed his end. Derek clenched his fists. He hadn't killed Caleb, but he hadn't saved him either. And to Vincent Hayes, that was enough to make him a man who needed to pay. Derek continued digging into Vincent Hayes, a cold shiver running down his spine. Vincent Hayes, arms dealer. He controlled some of the biggest illegal transactions in the region, but he wasn't just another criminal. He operated in secrecy, his network so well covered that no concrete evidence could ever be traced back to him. Derek flipped through old files. The name Vincent Hayes wasn't unfamiliar. He had appeared in James Callahan's investigation records years ago. Derek froze. It was all starting to make sense. James had been investigating Vincent Hayes. James wasn't just a special agent. He was a man who pursued justice relentlessly. The long-buried military reports revealed that James had been gathering evidence on Vincent's smuggling operations and had come dangerously close to exposing everything. And then, James had died, under mysterious circumstances. A tightness gripped Derek's chest. There had never been a clear explanation for James's death. A mission accident. No witnesses. A case closed too quickly. Now the final piece had clicked into place. If James had once been hunting Vincent, then had Vincent struck first? Derek leaned back in his chair, inhaling deeply. Guilt and anger twisted into something heavier. If Vincent had truly been behind James's death, then this wasn't just about him and Vincent anymore. This was blood debt. Derek shut his laptop, his mind still clouded with thoughts. He stared out the window, where the dim glow of streetlights cast pale reflections against the glass. The name Vincent Hayes was no longer just a lurking threat. It was a nightmare coming to life. Vincent had sent men after him in broad daylight, which meant he had been watching for a long time. But that wasn't the most concerning part. There was one truth that sent a deeper chill through Derek. If Vincent knew he was here, then he almost certainly knew about Liam, James's son. And if James had once been Vincent's enemy, then Liam could be his next target. A cold wave ran down Derek's spine. He had seen men like Vincent before, predators who never forgot those who threatened their power. If James had gathered evidence against Vincent, there was a real chance Vincent believed that Liam held something valuable. Derek clenched his fists. He wouldn't let that happen. He immediately reached out to Sarah, and his fears weren't unfounded. From the moment Rex had protected Derek in the alley, the dog had begun to change. Nightfall draped the city in eerie silence, but inside Sarah's small house, the air was anything but calm. Rex patrolled the home, his steps slow but deliberate, ears pricked high, sharp eyes scanning every corner. He no longer slept beside Liam like before. Instead, each night, he stood guard by the window, sometimes pausing for long stretches, listening to something beyond human perception. Then, one particularly late evening, as Sarah was about to head to bed, a low growl rumbled from the living room. A chill ran through her. She stepped out of her bedroom and saw Rex standing rigid by the window, every muscle tensed, the fur along his spine bristling. His eyes were locked onto something outside. She followed his gaze. Across the street, a black SUV sat in eerie stillness. Its headlights were off. No one got in or out. But a sickening unease crawled up Sarah's spine when she realized that the vehicle had been there for hours. She tried to recall. When she had put Liam to bed, it had been parked there. When she had returned from the grocery store, it had still been in the exact same spot. Now, close to midnight, it hadn't moved an inch. A cold sensation spread through her limbs. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, just another parked car. When, at that moment, a figure appeared at the end of the street. He didn't step out of the SUV but stood only a few houses away. Tall, clad in a dark coat, head slightly bowed, face swallowed in shadow. He did nothing, said nothing. He only watched. Patiently. Sarah's throat tightened. She couldn't see his eyes, but she knew. He was looking directly at this house. Rex's growl deepened, no longer just a quiet warning, but something sharp, unwavering, an undeniable acknowledgement of danger. The dog took a step forward, body lowering, every instinct primed for battle. Sarah stepped back, gripping her phone tightly. She quickly dialed Derek's number, but at that moment she noticed something strange. She turned to the security camera monitor, expecting to see footage of what was happening outside. But when the screen loaded, it was empty. She switched to different camera feeds, scanning every angle, but the footage from the last 3 hours had been wiped clean. A wave of fear crashed over her. Someone had infiltrated the system. She rushed to the network router, checking the security settings. The evidence was undeniable. Someone had hacked into her home's network, temporarily disabling it and erasing all surveillance data. She clutched her phone tighter and hit the call button. 2 short rings. Derek answered immediately. "Sarah?" His voice was tense. She tried to stay calm, but the tremor in her voice was unmistakable. "Derek, someone just erased all my security footage. And There's a man outside the house. I can't see his face, but he's watching Liam." A long silence, only the sound of Derek's steady breathing on the other end. Then, after a few seconds, his voice came through, low and controlled. "Lock all the doors! Don't let Liam step outside! I'm coming!" Sarah nodded, even though she knew he couldn't see her. She turned to Rex. The dog remained in position, muscles coiled, eyes locked on the window. She didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear. Whoever they were getting closer. Derek sped toward Sarah's house, pushing the limits of his bike's engine. His mind raced. He had known Vincent Hayes was a threat, but he hadn't expected him to move this quickly. Watching Sarah's house, hacking into the security system, it all pointed to one undeniable truth. Vincent knew about Liam. And if Vincent knew, it meant the boy was in real danger. When Derek arrived, Rex was already waiting at the door, his amber eyes gleaming in the headlights like polished onyx. He didn't bark, didn't growl, but his rigid stance said everything. He knew something was wrong. Sarah opened the door, stepping back to let him in. She didn't have to say anything. The worry in her expression told Derek all he needed to know. He strode into the living room, eyes scanning the security feeds on her computer screen. Just as she had said, the data was gone. Whoever had done this was precise. No traces left behind. Derek clenched his fists. By morning, he had made his decision. He couldn't wait for Vincent to make his next move. He was too dangerous, too methodical, and, most importantly, he had an entire network at his disposal to cover his tracks. If Derek wanted to stay ahead, he needed information, and no one was better at uncovering hidden truths than Derek and Rex. He would use every investigative skill he had honed in the military. First, he needed to pinpoint where Vincent was operating. Men like him never positioned themselves in easy-to-find locations. They stayed in the shadows, controlling everything from a distance. But no matter how well hidden a criminal organization was, it always had a weak point: its foot soldiers. Derek and Rex began tracking one of Vincent's known associates, a middleman who frequented a bar on the east side of the city, a hub for illegal arms deals. Derek couldn't walk in openly, but Rex could. That night, Derek and Rex positioned themselves in a narrow alley across from the bar, watching from a distance. Neon lights flickered against the rain-slick pavement. A black sedan pulled into the parking lot, slowing to a stop. A man stepped out, adjusting his jacket before heading inside. Derek recognized him instantly. James Parker, one of Vincent's key weapons brokers. If anyone knew what Vincent was planning, it was Parker. Derek signaled to Rex. The dog understood immediately. Moving with quiet precision, he tailed Parker, keeping just enough distance to remain unnoticed. A small transmitter on his collar relayed sound back to Derek's earpiece, capturing every word spoken inside the bar. Through the static of background noise, Parker's voice came through, low and cautious. "Everything's in place. Vincent wants it done by the weekend." Another voice responded, tense and uncertain. "But what about the kid? If he really has what Vincent is looking for?" Parker hesitated, then lowered his voice. "If the boy doesn't know anything, ending him will be easier." Derek felt a cold shiver run down his spine. There was no doubt anymore. Vincent was targeting Liam. But what troubled him most was that last sentence. If he really has what Vincent is looking for, what did that even mean? What could Liam possibly know? He was only 6 years old. How could he be connected to Vincent Hayes' crimes? Rex suddenly let out a low growl, and Derek immediately recognized the signal. The dog had caught a scent. Someone was approaching. Derek stepped back into the shadows, peering through a narrow gap in the alley. 2 more men had just stepped out of the bar, standing close to Parker. They didn't say a word, but their eyes scanned the area quickly, as if sensing something was off. He couldn't afford to be spotted. Derek signaled for Rex to retreat. The dog obeyed instantly, slipping away through another path, silent as a phantom in the night. Derek left as well, his mind heavy with everything he had just learned. He had been right about Vincent. But now there was something even more alarming. Liam wasn't just a target. There was a real possibility that he was unknowingly holding on to something important. When Derek returned to Sarah's house, his expression was grimmer than ever. Sarah opened the door, immediately sensing that something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, worry filling her voice. Derek's gaze flicked toward Liam's room, where the boy was still sleeping peacefully. "We can't stay here. We need to get Liam out of the city before it's too late." Sarah froze. "Leave? But Vincent isn't just watching him. He wants Liam gone." Derek's voice was low but firm, his eyes sharp like a blade. Sarah didn't argue. A cold fear settled deep in her chest. She turned to look at Rex, the dog standing steady and calm, as if he had understood everything from the very beginning. Derek reached for Rex's harness, gripping it tightly. "We're not letting that happen." The atmosphere in Sarah's house was stretched to its breaking point. After confirming that Vincent was after Liam, Derek had no choice but to plan their escape. The sooner the better. But nothing was ever that simple. Vincent was calculating and ruthless. If he had already traced their whereabouts, then every move they made could be under his watch. Derek barely slept that night. He checked every lock, went over the security system again and again, making sure no one was lurking nearby. Rex remained on patrol, stationed by the window, ears constantly alert. Every so often he let out a low growl, signaling something felt off. But the night passed without incident. Everything seemed quieter than usual, and that, more than anything, made Derek uneasy. The next morning, Sarah decided to step out for supplies. She wanted to prepare for their departure. Derek had planned to go with her, but she insisted he stay to protect Liam. But Derek was exhausted. Days of relentless tension had drained him. No matter how sharp his instincts were, the body could only take so much. Sleep tugged at him. Just a little rest, he told himself. Just a few minutes. Rex was still on guard. Everything would be fine. Letting out a breath, he leaned back against the chair and closed his eyes. Rex remained vigilant. He stood outside Liam's room, his sharp amber eyes scanning every shadow. When Sarah left, he tracked her from the window. But only a few minutes after she was gone, the sound of an approaching engine rumbled through the street. The black SUV. The same one from before. This time, it didn't just stop to observe. A deep growl rumbled in Rex's throat as he took a step back, his gaze locked onto the door. Something wasn't right. Something was very wrong. Then he caught the scent. Unfamiliar. Hostile. And then, the door slammed open. Two men in black rushed in, moving with terrifying speed. No warning, no hesitation. Their target was clear. Liam. Rex launched himself forward. He leaped with powerful force, jaws snapping toward the first intruder, but they were prepared. A metal baton swung down hard. A sharp, deafening crack rang through the air. Rex staggered but still tried to lunge again. This time, the blow came down even harder. The metal rod struck his shoulder, slamming him onto the floor. At the same moment, the other man rushed toward Liam. The boy screamed, kicking and thrashing, but the man was too strong. Another attacker grabbed hold of him, locking his small arms in a tight grip. "Let's go!" he barked. The commotion jolted Derek awake, ripping him out of his restless sleep. But by the time his eyes snapped open, it was already too late. The front door stood wide open. Liam was gone. The black SUV sped down the empty street, tires screeching against the pavement, leaving nothing behind except faint skid marks. Derek's heart clenched. He bolted forward, but it was useless. The car was already disappearing into the night. Only Rex remained, struggling to push himself off the ground, his breaths heavy, but his eyes still burning with fierce determination. He stared after the vanishing vehicle, still trying to stand despite the pain. Derek dropped to his knees beside Rex, gripping his fur tightly. "You okay?" His voice was rough, strained with anger and fear. Rex panted, his body trembling from the hit, but he steadied himself. In his amber eyes, there was no hesitation, only resolve. A silent promise that this fight wasn't over. Derek turned his gaze down the empty road where Liam had been taken. His fists clenched so tightly, his knuckles turned white. He had let this happen. He had made a mistake. But no matter what it took, he would bring Liam back. Rex shook his head hard, trying to clear the lingering dizziness. His breaths were still labored, but his gaze remained unwavering. The strike had stunned him, but it hadn't broken him. A trained canine never stopped. He locked eyes with Derek, his message clear. "We don't have time. We have to find Liam." Now Derek's jaw tightened, his pulse pounding with rage and urgency. Liam had been taken right in front of him, and he had done nothing to stop it. But there was no time to drown in regret. He turned to Rex, who was still slightly unsteady from the blow, but focused, fully aware of what was at stake. He wouldn't stop. Not until Liam was safe. Derek ran a hand over Rex's head, his voice low but filled with resolve. "Get in the car, Rex! We're finding Liam!" Rex didn't hesitate. He leaped into the passenger seat, eyes scanning the road, searching for anything, any trace, any clue. Derek started the engine. Tires screeched against the pavement as he sped off into the night. There were no security cameras to track the SUV's direction, no digital trails to follow. But Derek had one advantage: Rex. As they approached the spot where Liam had been taken, Derek slowed the car, giving Rex time to pick up a scent. The dog leaned out the window, nostrils flaring, inhaling deeply, sifting through every layer of scent in the air. 1 minute. 2. Silence filled the car, tense and suffocating, broken only by the hum of the engine and Rex's steady, focused breathing. Then, suddenly, Rex let out a low, guttural growl and turned his head sharply toward a nearby clearing. He barked once, urgent, before turning to Derek, eyes blazing with intent. Derek didn't need any more confirmation. He yanked the wheel, the tires screeching as the car veered off toward the empty lot. The second the vehicle stopped, Rex leaped out, sprinting toward an area where the dirt had been disturbed, where tire tracks carved deep into the ground. Derek followed, scanning the surroundings, alert for any signs of an ambush. Then he saw it. Lying in the dust, half buried beneath the dirt, was something small. He bent down and picked it up. A tiny sock, covered in grime. Liam had been here. Derek's grip tightened around the fabric, rage boiling in his chest. He glanced at Rex, who was already circling the area, inhaling deeply, locking onto the trail. The dog suddenly let out a sharp, clipped growl and shot forward, paws pounding against the ground with relentless purpose. "Go!" Derek commanded. Rex leaped back into the car. The moment his paws hit the seat, Derek slammed the gas pedal. Man and dog raced through the darkened streets, weaving past abandoned warehouses and dimly lit industrial roads. Derek's breathing grew heavier, not from exhaustion but from sheer anxiety. The farther they went, the clearer it became. Liam was being taken out of the city. Then, without warning, Rex tensed. His body stiffened, ears standing tall, tail lowering slightly, a sign of heightened awareness. A low growl rumbled from his throat as his pace slowed, every muscle coiled like a spring. Something was ahead. Derek frowned, silently drawing the handgun from his holster, though he knew that firing a shot now could make things even more dangerous. In front of him, an old warehouse stood in the middle of the barren lot. The decayed brick walls, shattered windows, and weak glow of distant streetlights only made it look more menacing. Rex stood by the rusted steel door, letting out a low growl. He didn't bark, but Derek knew. There were enemies inside. He slowly pulled the binoculars from his backpack and raised them to his eyes. 2 men stood guard at the entrance. Both were armed, one gripping a submachine gun, the other resting his hand on the belt where a combat knife gleamed under the dim light. Derek lowered the binoculars, his mind working fast. Calling the police wasn't an option. Vincent Hayes had likely made sure to avoid attracting any official attention. If the alarm was raised too soon, Liam could be moved before Derek could reach him. He turned to Rex, locking eyes with the sharp, golden stare. "You ready?" Rex didn't need a command. He had been ready from the moment Liam was taken. Derek took a deep breath, tightening his grip on the weapon in his hand. Tonight, he wasn't losing anyone. Crouched behind a pile of old wooden crates, Derek kept his eyes locked on the warehouse. The guards hadn't moved much, their postures firm, alert. That meant one thing. Liam was still inside. A flicker of hope sparked in Derek's chest, but it didn't last long. Vincent Hayes wasn't the type to keep a hostage for long, especially once he got what he wanted. He inhaled deeply, steadying his heartbeat. But when his eyes fell on Rex, who lay silently on the ground beside him, a memory surged forward. James Callahan, his old teammate, the man who had saved his life, the man who had run through enemy fire, pulling Derek out of the wreckage without hesitation. James had mentioned something before. Evidence. Derek looked down at Rex. The dog remained still, but his amber eyes stayed fixed on the warehouse door. He was waiting. But as Derek studied him more closely, he noticed something. Rex's collar. The leather was worn, but the metal buckle remained intact. A custom piece James had designed specifically for him. Derek remembered the day James had shown it to him, the way his eyes had glowed with something close to pride as he had said, "I never assign an important mission without a backup plan." A thought struck Derek like lightning. Carefully he unfastened the collar and turned it over in his hands, running his fingers along the seams. And then he felt it. A single, nearly invisible stitch, expertly sewn into the thick leather. Derek pulled out his knife, slipping the tip beneath the fine thread. With a careful flick, the stitching unraveled. Something small dropped into his palm. A USB drive. A cold chill ran down Derek's spine. James had known. Before he died, James had realized he might be killed. And so he had entrusted this evidence to Rex, his most loyal companion, in the hope that one day someone would find it. Derek clenched the USB tightly in his hand. He didn't need to check what was inside to understand its importance. If James had risked his life to hide it, then it held something that could destroy Vincent Hayes. And that was why Vincent had gone after Liam. Vincent believed James's son might know something. But the truth was, the thing he was hunting had never been with Liam. It had been here, with Derek, the entire time. He looked down at Rex, feeling a deep sense of admiration. James was right to trust you. Everything was clear now. Derek wouldn't let Liam fall into Vincent's hands. He wouldn't let another innocent life be taken because of Vincent's crimes. And most of all, he wouldn't let James's death be for nothing. He slid the USB into his pocket, his gaze darkening with determination. This was no longer just a rescue mission. This was the final battle to bring Vincent Hayes down. And Derek wasn't leaving without Liam. He lowered his voice, murmuring a single command. "Let's go, Rex." Rex let out a deep, low growl, his body tense, eyes blazing like a soldier marching into his final war. Darkness blanketed the old warehouse, where the dim, flickering lights cast a pale, uneven glow on the ground. The night wind howled through rusted metal sheets, creating an eerie sound, like distant whispers carried through the void. A tense silence hung over the place, as if time itself had abandoned it, except for a pair of watchful eyes tracking every movement. Rex moved silently, his golden coat blending seamlessly with the shadows, turning him into nothing more than a ghostly figure gliding across the ground. Every motion was precise, each step calculated, every breath measured. This wasn't the first time he had done this. A predator's instincts, sharpened by years of training, made Rex the perfect hunter. He didn't need verbal commands from Derek. Just the slightest gesture was enough to understand his mission. The entire day, Derek and Rex had been studying the warehouse, memorizing every corner, every entrance and exit. They knew at least one guard was posted outside, with likely more inside. Time was running out. If Vincent ordered Liam to be eliminated, there would be no second chance to save him. Derek held his breath, watching every movement of the guards. But Rex was the first to sense danger. He froze, his ears perked, nostrils flaring slightly as he carefully analyzed the scent carried by the wind. Gun oil. Foreign bodies. A smell that didn't belong here. A flicker of cold intensity sharpened in Rex's eyes. He lowered his body even further, moving slower, blending deeper into the darkness. A guard stood near the back entrance, his rifle gripped firmly in his hands. He leaned lazily against the wall, occasionally sweeping his gaze across the area, but his overconfidence made him careless. He didn't know that just a few feet behind him, another pair of eyes had locked onto his every move, waiting for the perfect moment. Derek signaled with a small movement. Rex understood instantly. In a split second, he coiled his body, muscles tensed, then launched forward like an arrow. The distance between Rex and the guard was barely a few meters, but at his speed, it might as well have been nothing. Before the man could turn around, Rex's powerful leap struck him, taking him down in an instant. His scream was muffled as Rex's jaws clamped onto his arm, teeth sinking deep into flesh, forcing him to drop his weapon. The sheer force of Rex's weight pinned him down, sharp fangs hovering just millimeters from his throat. He struggled, but it was useless. Rex's strength, combined with the searing pain in his arm, left him completely powerless. Derek rushed forward, swiftly covering the guard's mouth and securing his wrists behind his back with zip ties. There was no chance for him to call for help. His wide, panic-stricken eyes darted toward Rex, and the only emotion left in them was fear. Derek searched the man's vest and found a small radio. He adjusted the frequency slightly. A static hum crackled before a familiar, low, cold voice filled the air. Liam doesn't seem to know anything, but it's better to get rid of him before it's too late. Derek felt his blood boil. His body tensed, fists clenching so tightly his knuckles turned white. Vincent hadn't just been trying to use Liam, he was planning to kill him to erase any loose ends. A surge of fury burned through Derek, overpowering any rational thought. There was no time to hesitate. He leaned in close to Rex and whispered one short command. "Let's go, old friend." Rex responded with a deep, low growl, one filled with unwavering resolve. His eyes sharpened, focused like a warrior preparing for battle. He didn't care what lay ahead. All that mattered was Liam, and Rex wouldn't stop until the boy was safe. Derek drew his gun, moving swiftly toward the warehouse's main door. Rex stayed right beside him, his steps silent, his breathing controlled. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of rusted metal and dust, but Rex blocked everything else out. There was only one scent he was focused on. Liam. He could still smell it. Faint, but present. A sign that the boy was still alive. And that only strengthened his determination. Derek placed his hand on the door handle, but before he could push it open, Rex let out a quiet bark. A signal. Something was wrong. Derek froze, scanning the door more carefully. It wasn't locked, an unusual detail for a group as cautious as Vincent's men. He exchanged a glance with Rex. The dog understood immediately. Rex stepped back, lowering his body, ready for the worst. With a swift movement, Derek nudged the door open just enough for both of them to see inside. The warehouse's vast space came into view. Stacks of crates lined the walls, dim lights casting a weak, flickering glow onto the cold concrete floor. But the most important thing, right in the center of the room, tied tightly to a wooden chair, was Liam. The boy was still conscious, but fear was etched across his pale face. A man, one of Vincent's henchmen, stood beside him, gripping a gleaming knife. He was saying something, but Derek didn't hear a word. In that moment, only one thought filled his mind. Act now. Rex had recognized Liam the second he saw him. He didn't need a command. Without hesitation, he launched himself through the gap in the door before anyone could react. A single bark rang out, sharp as a death knell. The henchman barely had time to turn before a golden blur collided with him. The knife flew from his grip, clattering across the floor, while his body slammed hard against the ground. A pair of deadly fangs hovered just inches from his throat. Derek rushed in right after, gun raised, ready to fire if needed. But it wasn't necessary. Rex had already done what he did best. Quick, precise, and unstoppable. The darkness inside the warehouse felt thick and suffocating, like a cage ready to collapse at any moment. The cold of the concrete seeped through Derek's boots, making every step feel heavier with tension. His breathing slowed as he listened intently to the surrounding noises. The wind slipping through cracks in the roof, the distant creak of rusted metal, and then a faint, unmistakable sound. A soft, stifled sob. "Liam," Derek whispered, rushing forward to untie him. Just as he was loosening the ropes, Rex spun around abruptly, a deep, menacing growl rumbling from his throat. But this wasn't just a warning. It was recognition. His muscles tensed, front legs lowering, his entire posture signaling an imminent attack. But his eyes never left the shadows behind them. A voice, low and icy, echoed from the hallway. "You took too long, Foster. I've been waiting for you." Derek turned sharply, his grip tightening around his gun, aiming toward the voice. Standing at the entrance, gun calmly trained on Liam, was Vincent Hayes. There was no panic in his stance, no urgency, only a cold smirk curling at the edge of his lips. His eyes weren't on Derek or Rex. They were locked onto Liam, as if the boy was nothing more than a disposable piece in his grand game. "Let me guess." Vincent stepped forward slowly, the dim hallway light casting sharp shadows across his angular face, accentuating the scar running from his cheek to his jaw. "You've been digging into the past, haven't you? You found out James Callahan was investigating me, and now you're wondering, did I actually kill him?" Derek didn't answer, but his glare was steel cold. His hand tightened around the trigger, but he couldn't risk a shot. Vincent could end Liam in a heartbeat. Rex growled louder, teeth bared, every fiber of his being coiled, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Vincent let out a quiet chuckle, satisfaction glinting in his eyes. "I knew James was stubborn, but even I didn't expect him to be that good at digging," he said casually, as if reminiscing about an old acquaintance. "He was getting close. Too close. Another few days, and he would have had enough evidence to take me down. I couldn't let that happen." He shrugged, a nonchalant gesture, as if recounting something trivial. "So I handled it. A simple accident. No questions asked. One clean shot in the middle of the night, in an empty alley. I bet he didn't even see it coming." Derek felt something snap inside him. His entire body stiffened, every muscle coiled so tightly it hurt. But the pain in his chest wasn't just anger. It was grief, a searing wound reopened by the cruel truth he had been forced to hear. James hadn't died on a mission. He hadn't been lost in war. Vincent Hayes had murdered him. "And now," Vincent continued, shifting his gaze toward Liam, his voice dripping with disdain, "it's the kid's turn. He doesn't know anything, but I don't like leaving loose ends. Just like his father, he'll disappear. Forever." The air in the room thickened, an invisible noose tightening around Derek's throat. His heartbeat pounded like a war drum. He had to act. But he couldn't make a reckless move. Vincent only needed the slightest flick of a finger to end Liam's life. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway outside, shattering the tense standoff. Derek instinctively turned his head just in time to see one of Vincent's men burst in, gun raised, his finger tightening on the trigger, aiming straight at him. Bang! The gunshot rang out, sharp and deafening, but the bullet never reached its target, because Rex was faster than the trigger. The dog sprang forward like a lightning bolt, launching himself at the attacker before he could fully squeeze the trigger. His powerful jaws clamped onto the man's wrist, forcing a scream of agony as he crashed onto the concrete floor, the gun clattering away. But Rex wasn't finished. He growled, eyes burning with fury, his powerful body pinning the man down, rendering him completely immobile. Derek seized the opening. In the chaos, he fired. The bullet struck Vincent in the shoulder, knocking the gun from his grip. But before Derek could press forward, Rex, still holding his opponent down, suddenly barked, loud and sharp, the sound cutting through the cavernous warehouse like an alarm. A warning. Derek understood immediately. If Rex was alerting him, It meant the danger wasn't over. He spun around, scanning the dimly lit space. The back door to the warehouse was still open. From beyond it came the rhythmic pounding of boots against concrete. Shadows flickered in the darkness, the metallic glint of weapons catching the weak light. More of Vincent's men were closing in, and all of them were armed. Vincent chuckled, clutching his injured arm. "You really think you're walking out of here, Foster?" Derek didn't answer. He didn't need to. He exchanged a single glance with Rex, a wordless understanding forged in battle, the kind only true soldiers shared. Rex reacted instantly. He released the downed attacker and pushed off the ground, leaping toward Liam. The boy was still shaking, his small body rigid with fear, but the moment he saw Rex, something shifted. It was as if, in the middle of this storm, Rex was his one safe anchor. The dog planted himself in front of Liam, fur bristling, eyes locked onto the doorway where Vincent's reinforcements were ready to storm in. Derek knew the truth. This wasn't a fight they could win. The odds were overwhelming. Even if he and Rex managed to take down a few of them, Liam's safety was the only thing that mattered. He crouched low, his voice urgent but steady. "Hold on tight, kid. No matter what, don't let go." Liam swallowed hard and nodded, his small hands gripping the fabric of Derek's jacket with all his strength. Derek didn't hesitate. In one swift motion, he raised his gun and fired, not at the men, but at the overhead light. Bang! The single shot shattered the bulb, plunging the entire warehouse into darkness. He lunged forward, grabbing Liam and pulling him close. "Rex, move!" He didn't need to say it twice. Rex was already in motion. He navigated through the warehouse with precision, moving through tight spaces as if he had mapped the entire structure beforehand. His paws barely made a sound against the concrete floor, ears flicking back and forth, tracking every movement. The darkness meant nothing to him. His instincts and senses were far sharper than any human's. Behind them, Vincent roared, "Shoot! Don't let them escape!" Gunfire erupted. Bang! Bang! Derek ducked low, shielding Liam as they sprinted behind Rex. Bullets whizzed past, ricocheting off metal crates, sending sharp metallic clangs ringing through the warehouse. But Rex didn't falter. He led them through the maze of stacked pallets and wooden crates, weaving between obstacles, keeping them out of the line of fire. Derek kept his focus locked onto Rex's movements. As long as he followed, they had a way out. Then, suddenly, a flash of light behind them. One of Vincent's men had turned on a flashlight, sweeping it across the warehouse. In the next second, the beam landed on them. A gun raised. Before the man could fire, Rex pivoted sharply and lunged. Thud! A strangled gasp escaped the man's throat as Rex slammed into his chest, knocking him clean off his feet. His gun slipped from his grip, skidding across the floor. Rex didn't let up. His teeth latched onto the man's collar, yanking him back down as he tried to scramble up. Derek was already moving. He kicked the gun away and yanked Liam forward. The exit was only a few meters ahead. Then, Vincent's voice, cold and filled with rage. "You're not getting away, Foster." Derek didn't look back. He only shouted one command. "Rex, door!" Rex understood instantly. He charged ahead, leaping with all his strength and slamming his front paws against the emergency exit door. Bam! The door burst open, the cold night air rushing in like a wave, cutting through the stifling tension of the warehouse. Derek pulled Liam through and yanked the door shut behind them. Rex spun back, standing firm, his body tense, a growl deep in his throat. He knew this wasn't over. Vincent wouldn't give up that easily. But for now, they had a chance. The night wind lashed against Derek's face as he pushed open the warehouse door, yanking Liam forward into the open. Behind them, footsteps pounded in pursuit, and the deep growl of an engine roared like a predator closing in on its prey. They had no time to hesitate. The car door flew open. Derek shoved Liam into the back seat, and Rex, without needing a command, leapt in after him, positioning himself as a living shield between the boy and whatever threat might come next. His instincts screamed that the danger was far from over. A barrage of deafening gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through the air, striking the ground dangerously close to them. Derek ducked low, slammed the door shut, and stomped on the gas. The tires screeched violently against the pavement before the car rocketed into the darkness. But the escape wouldn't be easy. A black pickup truck shot out from the side of the warehouse, tearing after them at a blistering speed. Derek glanced at the rearview mirror. Two of Vincent's men leaned out of the truck's windows, rifles in hand. A burst of gunfire rattled against the back of his car, forcing him to grit his teeth and swerve sharply to avoid taking a direct hit. "Get down!" he barked, gripping the wheel with one hand while yanking Liam down into the footwell with the other. "Rex, keep him safe." Rex understood immediately. He didn't bark in fear like a regular dog would under fire. Instead, his body tensed, muscles coiled like steel cables, eyes scanning the battlefield with the precision of a seasoned warrior. He pressed against Liam, his breaths steady and controlled, chest rising and falling in sync with his sharpened focus. Every fiber of his being was attuned to the threat outside. Derek yanked the wheel hard, nearly losing control as another round of bullets struck the vehicle. The enemy truck remained relentless, staying on their tail like a predator locked onto its prey. Narrowing his eyes, Derek quickly assessed the road ahead. The open lot stretched wide, offering little cover. There were no buildings, no obstacles, nowhere to hide. The truck behind them surged closer. One of Vincent's men leaned out further, angling his rifle towards the car's tires, ready to take a disabling shot. Rex saw it first. The instant the gunman steadied his aim, the dog's muscles tightened. There was no hesitation, only instinct and decision. Derek caught the look in Rex's eyes from the corner of his vision. "No, Rex!" But it was too late. Rex lunged through the open window. In a perfect arc, he leaped through the air and landed squarely onto the bed of the enemy's pickup truck. The impact rocked the vehicle, sending a jolt through the men inside. The rifleman barely had time to react before Rex was on him, powerful jaws locking onto his shoulder. The man let out a strangled scream as his grip faltered. His gun slipped from his hands and clattered onto the asphalt, disappearing into the dark. The truck swerved violently, its driver struggling to regain control. Rex didn't stop there. He didn't just attack, he neutralized. Spinning his body with calculated precision, he used his weight to throw the wounded man off balance. A final, forceful shove sent him toppling out of the vehicle, crashing onto the road behind them. Derek seized the moment. He slammed the brakes. The truck behind him had no time to react. It barreled forward uncontrollably, smashing into the metal barricade at the edge of the road. The force of the impact sent it flipping onto its side, landing with a shuddering crash. Just in time, Rex leapt clear, landing on all fours just as the wrecked truck groaned under its own weight. But there was no time to celebrate. Derek barely had a second to regain control before another vehicle skidded into place, blocking their path. An SUV. Vincent was behind the wheel. Rex let out a fierce bark, his body rigid, hackles raised. He didn't need to look at Derek to understand the situation had taken a turn for the worse. He could smell it. More enemies, the thick scent of gunpowder, and the unmistakable air of imminent violence. Derek's grip tightened on the steering wheel. They had been cornered. The tension in the air was suffocating. Vincent's heavy boots echoed ominously against the pavement as he stepped out, eyes sweeping over Derek and Liam with detached amusement. A slow smirk curled at the edge of his lips. Then, with a casual flick of his fingers, the back door of the SUV swung open. A shadow dropped to the ground with a low, rumbling growl. A massive Belgian Malinois emerged, its razor-sharp eyes gleaming under the dim streetlights, teeth bared just enough to reveal its lethal intent. This wasn't just a dog. It was a weapon, a killer, trained for the sole purpose of destruction. Vincent's smirk deepened. "Let's see what your mutt can really do, Foster." Rex immediately tensed, his fur bristling, his muscles coiled, but he didn't rush forward. He was watching, studying, calculating. The Malinois began circling, its movements fluid and predatory. Rex remained still, his body lowered slightly, yet he held back from striking. He knew if he attacked too soon, he would expose a weakness. Suddenly, the Malinois lunged, its sharp teeth flashing toward Rex's throat, but Rex had already anticipated the move. He twisted to the side, using a deceptive feint to throw the opponent off balance. The moment the Malinois stumbled, Rex sprang forward, sinking his teeth deep into the back of its neck. But this opponent was no ordinary adversary. The Malinois twisted mid-air, contorting its body before sinking its jaws into Rex's hind leg. A sharp, painful growl tore through the air as Rex's claws scraped against the cement, but he refused to be overpowered. He retaliated immediately, using his weight to slam the Malinois to the ground. They rolled across the pavement, each bite and strike aimed with lethal precision. But Rex relied on more than just strength. He had intelligence. He spotted a weakness. The Malinois had been trained for direct, aggressive attacks, making it predictable. Rex exploited that flaw. He staggered backward, feigning weakness, letting his leg tremble as if he were struggling to keep up. The Malinois took the bait. It lunged for the finishing blow, and Rex spun out of the way at the last second. The Malinois missed. In that split-second opening, Rex struck. His jaws clamped around its throat, driving it hard against the pavement. A sickening crack echoed. The Malinois convulsed one last time before its body slumped. Breath fading. Defeated. Rex slowly released his grip and rose to his feet, his breaths ragged, his body bruised, but his gaze still sharp. He had won, not just with strength, but with strategy. While Rex fought, Derek faced Vincent. Derek panted, a deep gash on his arm dripping blood, sweat gathering on his forehead. He had been fighting all night, and his body was beginning to betray him. Vincent stood there, his eyes glinting with dangerous satisfaction. He smirked as he slowly removed his coat, revealing a scarred, battle-worn body, a testament to a life steeped in violence. He flipped his knife effortlessly between his fingers, the wound Derek had inflicted back at the warehouse seeming like nothing more than a scratch. "You humiliated me at the warehouse, Foster. Now I take back my honor." Vincent's voice was low and menacing, each word deliberate. Derek clenched his fists. He knew he was at a disadvantage. His strength had waned after the relentless pursuit, his wounds still bleeding. But he had no choice. He couldn't let Vincent walk away. He couldn't let Liam fall into his hands. Derek inhaled sharply, then charged. Vincent reacted instantly. The knife slashed through the air, and Derek barely dodged. The blade nicked his side, searing his skin with a deep cut. He was losing ground. Liam saw everything. Tied to his wheelchair, his body trembled with fear. But fear couldn't drown out the determination in his eyes. If he did nothing, Derek would die. Pain blurred Derek's vision for a moment. Vincent gave him no time to recover, landing a brutal kick to his stomach that sent him sprawling onto the ground. "I've waited too long for this," Vincent sneered, raising the knife high, aiming straight for Derek's heart. Liam gritted his teeth. He couldn't scream, he couldn't run, but he could do something. He let his body slip from the wheelchair, crashing onto the cold, unforgiving pavement. Sharp gravel scraped his skin, his knees burned, but he didn't care. With every ounce of strength he had, he crawled toward a large rock nearby. He couldn't stand, he couldn't fight, but he could throw. Time seemed to slow. Vincent tightened his grip on the knife, bringing it down with all his strength. And then, thud! The rock struck Vincent's temple. The force sent him reeling, his vision spinning, just for a second. And 1 second was all Derek needed. At the same moment, Rex, having just defeated the Malinois, launched himself forward like a bullet. He crashed into Vincent, his paws slamming against his chest, fangs locking onto his wrist. Vincent howled, trying to shake him off. He swung wildly, landing hard blows against Rex's ribs. But the dog didn't let go. The knife slipped from Vincent's grasp, clattering onto the pavement. Derek shot to his feet. He wasn't missing his chance. Derek threw a punch straight into Vincent's jaw, making him stumble. But this time he didn't stop. He struck again, each blow landing heavy as a hammer, fueled by all the rage, pain, and vengeance that Vincent had left in his wake. Vincent collapsed. He crumpled onto the ground, his eyes still open but his body too broken to rise again. Derek stood over him, his breath heavy, his fists still clenched. Rex remained alert, his posture tense, his gaze watchful. But there was also a quiet understanding. It was over. Derek turned toward Liam. The boy was still trembling, but his eyes burned with newfound resolve. He was no longer just a helpless child waiting for someone to protect him. Derek stepped forward, crouching beside him, helping him sit up. He gave the boy's shoulder a firm squeeze before murmuring, "You did good, kid." But Liam wasn't looking at Derek. His gaze was locked on Rex. The dog was lying on the cold ground, his breaths shallow, his body exhausted from the brutal fight. The sound of police sirens tore through the night, their piercing wail echoing across the empty wasteland. Flashing patrol lights bathed the battlefield in cold, flickering hues, illuminating sweat-streaked faces and dust-covered bodies. The acrid scent of burnt rubber, gunpowder, and the sharp metallic tang of blood hung heavy in the air. Derek stood there, his chest rising and falling with each ragged breath. His muscles were coiled tight, his body rigid like a drawn bowstring finally released after an endless war. At his feet, Vincent lay sprawled on the ground, his arm slick with blood from the wounds Rex had inflicted. Vincent pushed against the dirt with a trembling hand, his breath coming in shallow gasps. His eyes, dark with rage yet laced with bitter defeat, flickered up toward Derek, as if he still couldn't believe how this had ended. Heavy boots pounded against the pavement as armed officers swarmed the area, their weapons locked and ready. A senior officer stepped forward, his expression unreadable as he met Vincent's gaze. "Vincent Hayes, you are under arrest for arms trafficking, murder, and affiliation with an organized crime syndicate. We have more than enough evidence to prosecute you in court." Two officers stepped in, forcing Vincent's arms behind his back, locking the cold steel of handcuffs around his wrists. He hissed in pain but didn't resist. He knew he had lost. Derek remained silent, watching the scene unfold with empty eyes. He should have felt relief, but he didn't. Instead, a hollowness spread inside him, something cold and unfinished. "Foster," Vincent's voice rasped through the still night. His head lifted, his bloodied face twisted into something that resembled a smirk, but beneath it lay a simmering hatred. "You think this is over? I don't work alone. There are men stronger than you can imagine. One day, everything you've fought to protect will burn." Derek didn't respond. He simply stepped closer, lowering himself slightly, his voice quiet yet razor-sharp. "Then I'll be here to stop them." Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small object, a sleek, black USB drive. The moment the patrol lights reflected off its surface, Vincent's expression shifted. The smug arrogance drained from his face, replaced by something he hadn't shown all night. Fear. "You know what this is, don't you?" Derek's voice was calm, but his words sliced like a blade. Vincent didn't answer, but Derek saw the faintest twitch in his jaw, the way his muscles tightened ever so slightly. "James Callahan gathered every piece of evidence on you," Derek continued. "He tried to send it to the military, but he never got the chance. Now I'll finish what he started." Vincent's teeth are clenched, his eyes darkening. Parker took the USB and immediately handed it over to the forensics team. The technicians worked swiftly, decoding the encrypted data inside. Within hours, the evidence was authenticated. Money laundering records, lists of illegal arms deals, high-ranking officials under Vincent's control, and even classified assassination orders. All were laid bare. Line by line, the data surfaced on the monitors, each decrypted file cutting deeper into the empire Vincent had spent years constructing. He was not just an ordinary crime lord. He controlled an intricate underground network that had manipulated the city's black market for years. But now, it was all crumbling. The consequences of that USB extended beyond Vincent's arrest. Law enforcement launched a large-scale crackdown. Secret warehouses were raided, weapon stockpiles were seized, and Vincent's most trusted lieutenants were either captured or forced to expose the full extent of their operations. The money laundering system collapsed, with millions of illicit dollars frozen in offshore accounts. Corrupt government officials who had taken bribes to protect Vincent's operations were investigated, unraveling the power structure he had once dominated. After the battle, Rex was gravely injured. A deep wound gaped along his flank, the aftermath of the Malinois' bite, and the countless blows he had endured during the mission to save Liam. Liam, having just witnessed the brutal fight, could no longer contain his emotions. He dragged himself closer to Rex, his small hands trembling as they gently stroked the dog's soft fur. "Rex! Rex! Are you okay?" His voice cracked between sobs, tears streaming down his cheeks. Rex barely opened his eyes, his strength drained. His ears twitched instinctively, as if trying to reassure Liam that he was still there, still watching over him. But his body no longer obeyed his will. Derek knelt beside them, his hands clenched into fists. He had fought countless enemies, stared death in the face more times than he could count, but this moment clenched his chest in a way nothing else ever had. He had lost comrades on the battlefield before, but this was worse. Rex wasn't just a service dog. He was family. He was the last living thread connecting Derek to James. Without him, nothing would be complete. Without hesitation, Derek bent down and lifted Rex into his arms. He was heavier than Derek expected, but he didn't care. The dog's body was limp, his breaths weak but still present. "Stay with me, Rex. Don't you give up." Derek's voice was hoarse, almost pleading. Liam rolled his wheelchair forward, trying to keep up, but Derek turned to him, his voice firm. "Liam, wait here. I'll get Rex to the hospital." But the boy shook his head, his tears still falling. I can't let him go alone. I have to go with him." Derek studied Liam for a second, then without another word rushed to the car. He yanked open the door, carefully laying Rex on the back seat while Liam struggled to climb into the front. Derek helped him into position, fastened the seatbelt tightly, and then sped off. The car tore through the streets, traffic lights flashing past in blurs of red and green. Derek didn't care about speed limits, didn't care about the other cars on the road. His only focus was reaching the veterinary hospital before it was too late. Liam sat motionless, his eyes locked on Rex. He placed a small hand on the dog's fur, feeling the faint rise and fall of his breathing, silently praying. He had never believed in miracles before, but right now, he wished they were real. "How many times has Rex saved me?" Liam's voice was barely a whisper, breaking the tense silence in the car. He can't just go like this." Derek glanced at him before gripping the wheel tighter. "He's a warrior, Liam, and warriors don't fall that easily." But he knew those words weren't just for Liam. They were for himself, too. The car screeched as it veered sharply onto the road leading to the veterinary hospital. A night shift veterinarian had just stepped out of the entrance. The moment he saw Derek rushing toward him with an unconscious dog in his arms, he immediately understood. "Help me! He's been injured!" Derek shouted, his voice desperate. No questions were needed. The vet and two assistants sprinted forward, taking Rex from Derek's arms and placing him onto a stretcher before wheeling him inside. Liam tried to follow, but Derek gently stopped him. "We have to wait here." Liam was about to protest, but when he met Derek's gaze, he understood that, for now, the only thing they could do was wait. Both of them sat on the bench outside the emergency room, staring in silence at the tightly shut doors. The clock on the wall ticked on, each second stretching out like an eternity. A while later, Sarah appeared, breathless, her eyes filled with worry. "Liam, are you okay?" She knelt down, wrapping the boy in a tight embrace. Liam nodded but said nothing. His eyes remained locked on the emergency room doors. Derek leaned against the wall, his fingers interlaced, his face set like stone. This wasn't the first time he had waited outside an emergency room, but he had never felt this kind of anxiety before. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was the last remaining piece of everything Derek had left from his past with James. If he lost him, he wasn't sure if he could keep himself together. Inside, the doctors and assistants worked against time. The bite had torn deep into Rex's flank, causing severe tissue damage. They had to stop the bleeding immediately. One of the nurses glanced at the lead doctor, her voice laced with concern. "He's lost too much blood. Will he make it?" The doctor tightened his grip on his mask, his expression unwavering. "We're not letting him go down." Outside, time felt frozen. Liam couldn't take it any longer. He clutched Derek's sleeve, his voice quiet but firm. "I can't lose him. We've lost too much already." Derek looked down at the boy, then placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Rex is stronger than you think." But deep inside, he was praying just as hard as Liam. Minutes stretched on until, finally, the emergency room doors swung open. The doctor stepped out, pulling down his mask, exhaustion visible in his features but not defeat. "We stopped the bleeding and removed the bullet. Rex is still very weak, but he's out of immediate danger." Liam burst into tears, clinging tightly to Derek. Sarah exhaled a deep breath of relief, while Derek simply closed his eyes, the weight on his chest finally easing, if only a little. The doctor continued, "But he'll need time to recover. We'll be monitoring him closely for the next few days." Liam wiped his tears and looked inside the room, where Rex lay motionless on a gurney, his breaths faint but steady. "Can I see him?" The doctor nodded, and without hesitation, Liam wheeled himself inside. Derek stood still for a moment, watching as the boy reached out to gently stroke Rex's fur, whispering something only the two of them could understand. He knew the fight wasn't over yet, but for now, the most important thing was that Rex was alive. And to him, that was a miracle. The room where Rex was recovering remained quiet, save for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Pale light filtered through the window, casting soft shadows over the golden fur now wrapped in careful bandages. He was still weak, his breaths slow and labored, but that strong heart was still beating, still fighting. Liam sat beside him, his small hand resting gently on Rex's body, feeling the warmth beneath his fingertips. He said nothing, but his eyes spoke volumes. Worry, gratitude, and above all, an unbreakable bond with the companion who had saved him. He had lost everything before, but this time, he refused to lose anyone else. Derek stood by the doorway, observing the scene. He had witnessed many things in his life: bloody battlefields, fallen comrades, betrayals, and monsters wearing human faces. But never had he seen a friendship as pure as the one between Liam and Rex. To Liam, Rex wasn't just a dog. He was family, the one thing standing between him and a world full of danger. And to Rex, Liam wasn't just a boy. He was the reason Rex had fought with everything he had, the one he had vowed to protect until his last breath. Sarah entered the room, carrying a cup of hot coffee for Derek. She glanced at Liam before turning to Derek with a sigh. "He's been sitting there all night. He refuses to leave Rex's side, hasn't eaten anything." Her voice was a mixture of worry and warmth at the boy's unwavering dedication. Derek accepted the coffee, feeling the heat seep into his palms. He glanced at Liam before lowering his voice. "Rex will be okay. He's stronger than we think." Sarah nodded, though the concern in her eyes remained. "And what about you?" The question made Derek pause. She wasn't just asking about his physical state. She was asking about something deeper. Derek didn't answer right away. He looked at Rex, then at Liam, before turning toward the window. For so many years, he had lived without purpose, drifting between old memories and wounds that never truly healed. But now, seeing Liam and Rex, witnessing their bond, he realized that he was no longer lost. In the days that followed, Rex's recovery was slow but hopeful. Each day, he regained a little more strength, though the wounds still caused him pain. Liam spent most of his time by his side, reading to him, telling him silly stories he made up. Derek stayed as well, helping to care for both of them, never straying too far from Rex's side. One day, when Derek stepped into the room to check on them, he saw Liam gently brushing Rex's fur with a small comb. The boy whispered with quiet determination, "You're going to get better. I know it. You've saved me so many times, now it's my turn to take care of you." Rex flicked an ear, his warm brown eyes meeting Liam's as if he understood every word. Derek stood in the doorway, feeling something stir deep inside him, something he thought he had lost long ago. It wasn't just peace. It was purpose. He had come back from the darkness, not just for revenge, but to protect what remained. He realized he was no longer alone. He had found a new family: Liam, Sarah, and Rex. One afternoon, under a golden sky, Derek and Liam took Rex outside the veterinary hospital's backyard. He still couldn't walk as he used to, but with each slow, careful step, he was regaining his strength. Liam held the leash, walking beside him, while Derek followed close behind, watching. Rex paused, taking in a deep breath, then looked up at Derek. In his eyes, there was something unwavering, a silent promise. He was still here, still fighting, still loyal. And Derek knew that as long as they had each other, they would never fall. As Liam laughed for the first time in days, Derek understood that the boy had finally come to believe one thing: Rex wasn't going to leave him, and neither would Derek. 6 months passed since that fateful night when everything seemed destined to end in blood and darkness. But for Derek, Liam, and Rex, it was only the beginning of a new life. Rex had survived multiple high-risk surgeries, endured grueling days of physical therapy, and weathered pain that couldn't be put into words. But he fought like a true warrior. His resilience inspired everyone around him, especially Liam, who had never once lost faith in his four-legged companion. That morning, the sky was clear, sunlight casting a soft glow over the city's police headquarters, where a special ceremony was about to take place. Derek and Liam stood at the front row of seats, both dressed sharply for the occasion. Liam sat in his wheelchair, but today, there was no trace of sadness or insecurity in his eyes. His gaze shone with pride and joy as he looked toward the stage, where Rex stood tall beside a police officer. His fur, now fully healed, gleamed under the morning light like a living medal of bravery. The crowd quieted as the police chief stepped onto the podium, gripping the microphone. His gaze swept across the audience before settling on Derek, Liam, and Rex. Today, we honor not just the brave individuals who have fought for justice, but also an extraordinary warrior, Rex. Applause erupted, all eyes turning to Rex. The dog seemed to understand what was happening. He lifted his head proudly, his stance unwavering, though his tail gave a subtle wag, a small sign that he, too, could feel the joy of the moment. The police chief continued, "Rex has shown us that loyalty and courage are not traits exclusive to mankind, but are also found in our four-legged heroes. In the battle against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations, Rex never hesitated to put his own life on the line, to protect his handler, to protect an innocent child." He turned toward Derek, his expression filled with genuine respect. "And alongside Rex, we must also recognize the man who stood by him. Derek Foster, a man who did not hesitate to step into the darkness so that justice could bring light to this city." Derek remained silent, offering only a slight nod. He had never sought recognition, but in this moment, he knew that everything he had done had mattered. The police chief continued, raising a small box in his hands. "And now, on behalf of the city's police department, I am honored to present the Medal of Valor to Rex, a true symbol of courage." He opened the box, revealing a gleaming medal engraved with the name Rex and the words, "Brave Warrior, Rex." As the chief knelt to fasten the medal around Rex's neck, the entire crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Liam couldn't contain his emotions. He rushed forward, wrapping his arms around Rex. "You did it, Rex! You're a real hero!" His voice broke into sobs. But this time, they were not tears of pain or fear. They were tears of joy. Rex didn't fully understand the significance of the medal, but he understood Liam's happiness, and that was enough. He nuzzled into the boy's embrace, then lifted his head toward Derek, as if sharing this victory with him. Derek knelt beside them, gently stroking Rex's head. "Good job, old friend. You deserve this." The police chief remained on the podium, but he didn't conclude the ceremony just yet. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out another box. A small object, but one that carried a meaning greater than any medal ever could. The air grew still as he spoke, his voice solemn. "Today, we do not only honor Rex and Derek, but also someone we must never forget. A man who gave everything for justice, for the safety of this city, and paid the ultimate price. That man was James Callahan." James's name echoed across the gathering, like a flame reigniting old memories. Every officer in attendance stood at attention, their expressions filled with deep respect. James Callahan, a fellow soldier, a fearless officer who never backed down from danger, a man who had dedicated his life to fighting the forces of darkness and, in the end, had sacrificed himself in that battle. But the justice he had pursued had not died with him. Because of the evidence he left behind, Vincent's criminal empire had been dismantled, restoring peace to countless innocent lives. The chief opened the box, revealing a prestigious Police Meritorious Service Medal, one of the highest honors awarded to those who had fallen in the line of duty. "I would like to present this medal in honor of James Callahan, a man who may have left this world, but whose spirit will live on. And on his behalf, I ask his son, Liam Callahan, to accept this award." All eyes turned to the small boy in the wheelchair. Liam froze for a moment, his lips parting, but no words came out. He had never expected that today. It wouldn't just be Rex being honored. His father was being remembered too. Derek knelt beside him, resting a firm hand on his shoulder, nodding. "Go get it, kid. Your father deserves this." Liam took a deep breath. Then, with every ounce of strength he had, he pushed his wheelchair forward toward the police chief. His small hands trembled as he accepted the medal, but in his eyes, there was no longer grief or loss. Instead, there was pride, burning and bright. His father was no longer just a distant memory. James Callahan was not just the man who had left him too soon. He was a hero. And Liam Callahan, would carry on his legacy. Liam clutched the medal tightly, whispering as if speaking directly to his father. "I'll never forget you, and I know you're proud of me." A single tear rolled down his cheek. But this time, it wasn't a tear of sadness. After all the pain, he could finally feel his father's presence. Not through sorrow, but through honor. Derek watched the boy, an indescribable emotion swelling in his chest. He knew James would have been proud to see this moment. That man had fought not just to make the world a better place, but to protect his son's future. And today, Liam had proven that James still lived on within him. Rex stood beside Liam, gently pressing his head against the boy's leg, as if silently reassuring him that he would always be there, just like his father once was. As Liam returned to his seat, still holding on to the medal, the entire assembly rose to their feet, giving a standing ovation. No one there would ever forget James Callahan. No one would allow his sacrifice to be in vain. Justice had prevailed. And today was not just a ceremony, it was a declaration that the light of true heroes would never fade. And in that moment, amidst the cheers and applause, Derek realized that his life had changed forever. He was no longer a man wandering without purpose. He had found something he never thought he would have again: a family. When his eyes met Liam's, then Rex's, he understood that this was where he belonged. And no matter what the future held, he knew that as long as they stood together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The vast blue ocean stretched endlessly to the horizon, waves rolling onto the soft white sand, leaving behind trails of foam that quickly dissolved under the golden hues of the setting sun. The air was crisp, carrying the salty scent of the sea, mingling with the joyful laughter of a boy pushing his wheelchair across the warm sand. For the first time in years, Liam looked truly happy. His smile was no longer a fragile mask hiding grief, but a reflection of pure joy, the kind that only comes from feeling safe, from knowing he was loved. Beside him, Rex ran along the shoreline, ears perked, tongue hanging out as he reveled in the cool ocean breeze sweeping through his golden fur. The scars were gone. The days of lying motionless on an operating table with pain-clouded eyes were behind him. Now he was once again the warrior he had always been, strong, resilient, unyielding. Every time Liam tilted slightly, his wheelchair threatening to sink into the sand, Rex instinctively moved closer, ready to steady him with his body, as if he understood his role perfectly, not just as a friend, but as a guardian. A short distance away, Derek stood with his arms crossed, watching them with a peace he never thought he would feel again. 6 months ago, he had been a lost man, haunted by the past, by the deaths he couldn't prevent, by the mistakes he couldn't undo. But now, as he watched Liam and Rex playing before him, he knew he had found something more than redemption. He had found a purpose, a family. Sarah approached, standing beside him, tilting her head slightly as she observed him. "So, you've made your decision?" Her voice was soft, absent of the guarded caution she once held toward him. Derek nodded, his gaze still fixed on Liam. "Yeah, James left me something more valuable than any mission. His son. I'm not going anywhere. From now on, I'll be here to protect him." He took a deep breath, then smirked slightly. "And if Sarah Callahan doesn't mind, I might also help take care of that stubborn dog over there." Sarah let out a soft laugh, one of relief and warmth. "You know, for a long time, I thought no one could ever replace James in Liam's life. But now I realize that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stay, no matter what." She looked at him for a long moment, then added, "And I believe James would agree." Derek didn't respond right away. He didn't need to. He had known it from the moment Liam had thrown himself into his arms, sobbing, when he and Rex had emerged from the hospital. The boy no longer saw him as just an acquaintance of his father, but as a part of the family he was building. And Derek, he wasn't staying just because of a promise to James. He was staying because he had finally found where he belonged. Liam turned around, his eyes gleaming under the golden twilight. "Derek, Rex, look at this." He held up a large seashell, his excitement radiant in the fading light. Derek walked over, crouching beside him. "That's a nice one, kid. You gonna keep it as a souvenir?" Liam shook his head and placed the shell in Derek's hand. "No, I want you to have it. So you'll remember, no matter what happens, we'll always be here." Derek stared at the shell in his palm, then at Liam. There were too many things he could have said, but instead he simply reached out and ruffled the boy's hair. "Thanks, kid." Liam beamed, then turned to Rex, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck in a loving embrace. "We're a family, right, Rex?" Rex let out a short, firm bark, as if confirming the statement, before pressing his head into Liam's chest with the quiet devotion of a protector. The sky deepened into a rich shade of violet, the last streaks of sunlight painting the ocean in breathtaking hues. There, on that shore, a man once trapped by his past had found his freedom. A boy who had lost everything had rediscovered love. And a dog, loyal beyond words, had fought with everything he had to protect the ones he cherished. They didn't need shared blood to be a family. They just needed each other. Derek sat down on the sand beside Liam, and Rex curled up contentedly at their feet. Together they gazed out at the vast ocean, where the waves never ceased, always moving forward, just like life itself, no matter the hardships they had faced. And this time they weren't alone, because they had each other. The heartfelt story of Rex is not just a grueling journey to uncover the truth, but a testament to the power of loyalty, love, and an unbreakable bond that transcends all boundaries. From a fearless canine service dog, Rex never hesitated to put his own life on the line to protect those he cherished. And Derek, once a man imprisoned by his past, overcame his own demons and found a new purpose in life. Their journey poses a profound question. What truly makes a family? Is it blood? Or is it love, sacrifice, and the unwavering willingness to stand by one another, no matter what? Share your thoughts in the comments below.